It's time to run through the California rental application. This guide for tenants and landlords is going to run through some common mistakes that both make related to these forms, and we're also going to give you each some hot tips. And make sure you stick around to the end where we are going to share a shocking place where a renter may not have to give an honest answer. Hey there. Christian Walsh, real estate agent with Wire Associates. We've been helping renters and landlords make the best decisions during these crazy days. We're going to run through the paper version of the California rental application. A lot of landlords still use this. There's an online version you may come across called Rent Spree. In this online version, they ask the same questions and they end up creating a PDF that looks a lot like the California rental application. Plus, there are other sites out there, Zillow, for example, that has a renter's application. This is specifically the California Association of Realtors rental application. And remember, we can't give tax or legal advice, but for the most honest and up-to-date real estate advice, subscribe to this channel. Let's dive into the California Association of Realtors application to rent/screening fee, both combined into one form. It covers all of this. We're going to run through this quickly. It's not that complicated of a form, but it's worth noting some common mistakes and some things that need to be checked correctly. So this is a guide again for tenants and landlords. Number one is related to who is completing the application. So it could be a tenant by themselves, could be a tenant with co-tenant. It could be multiple co-tenants, could be 3 or 4 people, and then there could possibly be a co-signer as well who will need to fill one of these out. So you need to put the total number of applicants on here so that they can be bunched together. Ideally, you deliver them together so that the landlord or whoever's running the screening is going to know who this application set belongs to. Moving on, the premises, we have the address, the rent, which would typically be per month, and then a proposed move-in date. A very important point to remember, tenants, is that all things being equal, the sooner you can move in, or at the very least take possession, more likely the landlord's going to choose you so they can avoid missing out on rent. So that's an important point. Make sure you talk to the landlord to see realistically when it's available and adjust your move-in date to help your application move to the top. Next, the personal information. A lot of this is self-explanatory. Full name, date of birth. The date of birth cannot be used for age discrimination. What's age discrimination? Well, a landlord can't not rent to a bunch of college students because they're all 18 to 22. That is not a reason to discriminate, and can't decide not to rent to somebody because they're too old. Cannot use age discrimination. Next, we get into driver's license number, the state, and when it expires. Section 2C covers the social security number. We'll talk about that in a minute. Again, a lot of common sense stuff. Phone number, make sure this is legible. Email, make sure this is legible. We send a screening link via email, and if we can't read your email, it causes problems. Then the names of the proposed occupants and the relationship to the applicant. This also is another area where a landlord can't discriminate. If folks aren't married, a landlord can't discriminate. And if folks are married and have kids, for instance, a landlord can't discriminate. Moving on to pets, other than service or companion animals, emotional support animals, those are not considered pets, but you still let the landlord know that you do indeed have one. Moving into cars, in case of an emergency, who to contact, that's important information. Unfortunately, things happen to tenants. There have been cases, for example, my wife is a property manager, where someone has passed away in a rental unit. You need to be able to connect with next of kin. J, the liquid-filled furniture, not sure why people still put this in here. Most people don't use waterbeds. Most people who are below a certain age have never even heard of a waterbed. So mark this no unless you have a waterbed, and be honest. Then K, L, and M, those are important questions to answer. Make sure you stick around to the end because there's something important about these questions that I am going to share that I found out in court today from the judge. I was in court as a witness for a case, and the judge had some very interesting and enlightening advice or comments. M is another important one related to felonies, and there's some language under here. Landlords have to be very careful in discriminating against tenants and not accepting tenants based on a criminal record. There are very specific reasons a landlord may be able to turn down somebody for a felony, but definitely landlords, I would talk to an attorney before turning anyone down solely for this reason. The residence history is an important section. A lot of good landlords are going to screen tenants by doing a rental verification and talking to the previous landlord. So ideally you have accurate information and an accurate reason for leaving the current address. Then it has two sections. If you've been at a residence for a long time, you may not need to add the second section. You can ask the landlord when you're applying because it may be too long ago. If you've lived somewhere for 10 years, you may not remember the previous landlord, have any other information. The other important thing is if your residence history, for example, you're moving from home, put that on here. Let the landlord know that you're moving from your parents' house. Employment and income history, obviously very important that a landlord understands that you can pay for the unit. So this is important that it's accurate. And the other important thing is make sure it matches the paperwork that you turn in. A lot of landlords are going to ask for pay stubs to show the income you make. So make sure your employment gross income matches and make sure that the employer matches. If you have multiple employers, put them on there. You can let the landlord know that you have a few employers. The more income you can show, then more likely that's going to help the landlord choose you as a tenant. Credit information. I asked the landlord how important this is, and you can put just a couple. We're actually going to use the credit report to get this. At least that's how we screen. Who knows, some landlords may want this filled out. I would put the name of bank or branch showing account balances. So if you have some big savings accounts, you could put those on here. And then the landlord may not need the full account number on there. So you can ask if the last four are sufficient and then give them bank statements to show that you have the savings. Make it easy to choose you as a tenant. Now you're going to add a couple of personal references. It usually helps if they're not co-tenants that you're applying with, if they're other people. Could be a friend, could be an employer, for example. And then nearest relatives, again, if you can add a relative that you're not applying with on this application, put those nearest relatives on there as well. This is information that landlords may or may not call on, but it needs to be accurate and make sure that if you do give a personal reference, that that personal reference knows that you're passing their name along so there's no surprises and they aren't confused when they talk to your landlord. That will not show well. Some important information under 9, that this is an application. It doesn't guarantee that you're going to be accepted for it. The landlord has the ultimate decision, and there may be more than one application obviously as well. The applicant may also need to provide a copy of the driver's license. And of course, you're going to verify that everything you've written here is true. A few other things down there. The important thing, and this is a common mistake, is people don't sign under number 10 because there's a couple places to sign on this particular form. Make sure you sign under number 10. Next part is about the screening fee. Most applicants will have to pay some sort of screening fee. It's regulated by law how big it can be. Usually it is the direct cost for pulling a background check. We have tenants when we're screening just pay it directly to the vendor. Others may want a check from the tenant. That's all outlined here. And that's another mistake that applicants make sometimes, is not knowing where to send the application fee or how much the application fee is, and not giving that application fee. So it's not a complete application until you've paid the fee. The other important thing is this is generally a non-refundable fee. If you do not get the rental, if you're not approved for the rental, you don't get your money back. So know that going in. This can add up if you're applying for multiple properties. And then another big mistake that tenants will make is not signing this page. There needs to be a signature on this page. Landlords, you can't run their credit without having a signed copy of this page. And this section addresses the social security number or tax identification number. We used to have it on page 1 of the application. Now the tenant can go ahead and enter that number directly into the screening service. If number 4 is checked, the landlord can request that number, and they would check this box here in order to do that. And one last important page that's included with this, and that's the problem if you just go ahead and Google up an application, it often doesn't include this important disclosure or a similar disclosure about how information is collected, what is collected, and that the tenant can request a copy of it. So landlords, don't just Google stuff up and try to use it. And tenants, make sure that you get something that tells you what's going to be pulled on the background check and lets you know exactly what's going to happen for the background check. It comes automatically in the California Association of Realtors rental application. So for landlords using this, just make sure you include page 4. Thanks for sticking around to the end. We promised to share something we heard today while in court that was unbelievable to us, and this came directly from the judge. I was there as a witness for an eviction trial, and the judge referenced this, that K&L could be marked no by a tenant potentially, even though they had been evicted in the past. The reason being, the case was sealed. So when a case is sealed, it's no longer in the public record, and you can still get to it, but you need a court order. So this particular case, the tenant's previous eviction had been sealed when she filled out the application. Essentially, the judge said that the case was sealed, so the tenant maybe was able to mark these as no. He wasn't sure. So you may be wondering, well, how did this come up if the case was sealed? The eviction attorney for the plaintiff that was there today was on his second eviction for the same exact person. He knew about the eviction and the fact that it had been sealed because he was the eviction attorney in the last eviction. So it's just a crazy coincidence that this even came up. And of course, I'm going to let you know that landlords discuss this with your attorneys if you see this has happened. And tenants, make sure you discuss with an attorney before marking these boxes no if the answer is indeed yes. Let us know your questions about the California rental application in the comment section below. We'll do our best to answer those or point you in the right direction. If you found this video helpful at all, please give that like button one gentle tap. That's all it takes. Make sure you're subscribed to our free weekly email newsletter. You will get amazing updates like this delivered to your email inbox every Sunday. Make sure you check out this next video where we cover more topics for renters and landlords. Thanks for tuning in. This has been Christian Walsh, real estate agent with Wire Associates, and we want to hear from you.